However, Mr. Speaker, disguising the true meaning was not enough. It was necessary to avoid a referendum. State after state that had planned a constitutional referendum participated in a willing charade that these proposals were somehow not as substantive as the Constitution and needn't be put to a vote. And quite frankly, it is a national disgrace that we, in the United Kingdom, were not only associated with, but full participants in such a process, joining in a near total democratic shutout of people across Europe. I give way.
I thank my honourable friend.
Ms. Carswell.
For decades, it's been left to the political elite, if one can call them that, in SW1 and professional diplomats to decide our relationship with Europe. We do need to give the people a say. Does he not agree with me that we need to go even further, though, and allow the people of the United Kingdom a vote on the UK's entire membership of the EU?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable member and thank him for his support. And obviously there are others in this House who would advocate a referendum on the membership as a whole in terms of whether we should be in the European Union or not. This is about people fulfilling their promise that was made in the 2005 general election, however, a specific commitment that there would be a referendum on the new European Constitution. And what my bill is about making sure and trying to ensure that all of the main parties in this House honour that commitment. And that's why I have focused on that issue, because I believe it is a matter of restoring trust in politicians and in this House. And therefore, I believe that that specific issue needs to be addressed, and no doubt honourable members from those parties will want to say why, if that is still their position, why they want to deny the people their say on the constitutional changes and why they are not fulfilling their manifesto commitments.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. Will you accept that one of the biggest travesties is that during the last general election, people didn't engage in a debate about Europe because they thought they were going to have that debate about Europe in the referendum, and then cynically the government denied the people a referendum? And does the honourable gentleman share my hope that the issue of Europe will feature prominently in the forthcoming general election campaign?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable member, and he's absolutely right. I well remember the 2005 election campaign, and at that point, the people were told by the government that there was no need to have this debate during that period because this was going to be the subject of a debate in and around a referendum that would be held, and therefore there was no need to concentrate on it at that time. Of course, this was clearly a means of getting it off the agenda, and I suspect that the same thing is now happening as far as the coming general election is concerned. Because not only does the government not want this matter to be debated, but it is clear that the leadership of the opposition does not want this to be a matter for public debate, sadly. Because when we examine the position, we've examined the position of the government, but when we come on to examine the position of Her Majesty's opposition, in 2007, the Right Honourable Member for Witney made it absolutely explicit in his personal promise of a referendum, come what may, that there was no wriggle room. He offered a cast-iron guarantee to put any treaty in front of the voters. He said, if I become Prime Minister, a Conservative government will hold a referendum on any EU treaty that emerges from these negotiations, i.e. negotiations on the Lisbon Treaty. And again, he very significantly focused on the issue of trust, because speaking of the Prime Minister, these were the words that the Right Honourable Gentleman used in an article in the Sun newspaper. He said the final reason we must have a vote is trust. Gordon Brown talks about new politics, but there's nothing new about breaking your promises to the British public. It's classic Labour. Small wonder that so many people don't believe a word politicians ever say if they break their word so casually. And I think it needs to be recalled, Mr Deputy Speaker, that that promise of a referendum, reference was made to it again as late as May 2009 during the European election campaign, and yet in November 2009 that promise was dropped. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I could go on to deal with the issue of why a referendum is a perfectly acceptable means and device to deal with this particular issue. Some people argue that in a parliamentary democracy such as we have, that we shouldn't be reverting to the concept of a referendum that's foreign to our tradition, but of course it can be entirely reconciled with the principle of parliamentary sovereignty. It's given that we've had one national referendum on the issue of membership of the common market, as it then was. The tradition has been well established, and it's been established in other areas of the United Kingdom where polls have taken place and people have been asked their views when constitutional change has been brought about or been considered. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, the real reason that we need a referendum is not only the way in which the people of the United Kingdom can, through a referendum, be sure that this issue is being taken seriously. It's the only way of ensuring that those with whom we have to negotiate in Europe and the EU Commission will take us seriously. It's been suggested that the way forward, instead of having a referendum, is to have a plan for the repatriation of powers from the European Union back into the United Kingdom, put those suggestions into a party manifesto that's then voted on during the general election, and that somehow this is an effective means of giving the necessary strength and power and authority to those who will negotiate on the part of the government with the other member states of Europe and the European Commission and so on. Leaving aside, Mr Deputy Speaker, why people should be expected to vote overwhelmingly on the basis of manifesto promises when previous clear-cut and cast-iron guarantees have already been set aside, the fact is that such a way forward in no way would provide strength to the hands of negotiators in the way a clear referendum undoubtedly would. Without a referendum, it is extremely difficult, I say impossible, to see other member states of the European Union agreeing, as they have to do by unanimity, to accede to British wishes on repatriation of powers. Or, yes, I will indeed.
To the honourable member for giving way on that point. I mean, would he agree with me that the concept of repatriation of powers is no more than hot air, and that in reality lots and lots of decent, long-serving Conservatives are flooding off to other parties like UKIP because they have no trust in the Conservatives' proposals to actually repatriate powers?
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable member and for his intervention and for his support for this bill as a co-sponsor. And can I say that I think people have a lot of distrust, not just in the party that he has mentioned on the opposition benches, but also in the governing party and other parties, because what they see is, instead of being given what they were promised, a clear-cut say that for themselves, what they're being promised are vague notions of people going off to negotiate and do things or hold the line. There will be no further, on the part of the government, the Prime Minister said there will be no further transfer of powers or institutions for two parliaments. The opposition are saying we will go off and negotiate, that we will also introduce some other measures, which I want to come on to. But all of this, compared to the clear-cut commitment to a referendum, I think it creates no impression on the British people. They want their say. They want their say in a referendum, as has been promised to them. And a referendum has the effect, Mr Deputy Speaker, of ensuring that the political classes, the government, actually carries out the wishes of the people. It's a lot harder, quite frankly, to fudge the outcome of negotiations which have been entered into on foot of a massive referendum result